This is what happens when an MMO dies while trying to kill WoW off. That's right. The staff are leaking. And I don't think he's talking about their buttholes, guys. This is an absolute disaster for Ashes of Creation. The fallout continues. Let's continue to follow the story of Ashes and how it died before it could even be rezzed. Here we go from Bellular.
They couldn't have picked a better name for the thing because now Ashes is all that we are left with. Today we're talking about the biggest MMO in Kickstarter history and its implosion. The founder has resigned in a very eyebrow-raising way. Staff have been fired, they have got no pay, and the game has...
Konesia says, damn, I already watched this. That's your problem, Konesia. You should not watch videos until Samiccus watches the video. Everybody knows that.
It's been pulled from Steam, where it only launched 2 months ago. And as fans are raging, rightly, at the collapse of a game 8 years in the making that never even reached beta, insiders are telling of a mysterious new owner who killed the company rather than keep spending. Ashes of Creation was kickstarted in 2017. It was a hyper-ambitious MMO from a brand new team, Intrepid Studios, that wanted 750,000 USD and ended up raising 3.2 million, making it the most funded MMO on the platform at the time. As we all know, Kickstarter MMOs have...
I wonder, did these ever happen? Camelot, Unchained, and Chronicles of Illyria? Does anybody knows if those are happening still? I don't know, man. These Kickstarter MMOs, probably not the best thing. It takes so much money to make an MMO. It's unbelievable. I don't know if there's a single Kickstarter out there that could completely fund an MMO. I mean, literally, this one had a multi-millionaire backing it. And this guy was burning cash like crazy. Still couldn't keep up with it. It's just a big undertaking. Is the thought of an MMO made by the people for the people, is that a nice thought? Is it, makes you get all, warm and feely and, it gives you tinglies in your crotch? Maybe. But is it possible? I don't think so. I think the only way to really have an MMO made and brought to the market properly is probably via a AAA studio, which is why I think Riot is going to be the one that actually does it, right? You got World of Warcraft, Blizzard Entertainment, that was a big deal. They did it also at a different time. The whole landscape was different back then. But now you got Riot coming out with one, but even then, it's not guaranteed it's going to work. Look at Amazon. I mean, you don't get much bigger than Amazon. Fucking their MMOs have failed. New World, dead. It's crazy. It's very hard to do.
At the time, as we all know...
Star Citizen says hi. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. Star Citizen, I think, where it's really cake and it's true. Gold lies within its server tech that they're creating. That shit's pretty cool. We'll see where that goes.
Kickstarter MMOs have really by now got a hell of a track record. Now, it was also that Stephen Sharif, the game's founder and creative director, could build the dynamic, faction-driven MMO that he had always dreamt of. And throughout development, his public position was clear. And this is what's getting them into hot water. The game was self-funded. There were no investors. There would be no board to answer to. That's going to make a message we'll talk about soon seem a little bit funny. Now, what followed was 8 years of, I think, what we can only call messiness. A Battle Royale was launched in 2018, ostensibly to test mechanics, and then it was shut down by 2020. Now, the alpha continued from 2021 onward, with premium backers getting hands-on access. And when I say premium backers, in some cases, I really do mean the premium.
They paid a shit ton.
I think the Ashes people have quite outdone the whales of Star Citizen. But then, in December 2025, Ashes of Creation was released on Steam in early access. It was still an alpha, and it was in a state that many users found unacceptable for a paid product. Reviews were mixed, and signs that this release hadn't gone well internally were already beginning to show.
Okay.
And it's the sort of thing where there are a lot of cool bones in the game, and once people would get to endgame, be able to do, say, the stuff with the boats. And I guess where a lot of the Arc Age inspirations came from, that's another MMO with a pretty disastrous history, sadly. There was a lot of cool stuff. However, leveling up was essentially just a humongous mob grind. The quest content wasn't really there, just a whole bunch of issues. And for a lot of people, while there were a lot of systems there, it seemed perplexing that it was so light in content for such a long development cycle. Now, I talked about signs not really being good. Well, 9 people were laid off from a team of 250 in late January. Okay, that's sucks for those people, but it's only 9 out of 250. Now, when this happened, Sharif posted, quote, "Development on Ashes is continuing forward. However, By
Yeah.
the 29th of January, just a few days later, and all as players continued to worry, Intrepid released a statement trying.
They even had a like a scheduled get together with the community, like their update, their like monthly or whatever they were doing. I don't know how often they were doing it, but there was an update scheduled for like just I think it was like a week or two after what was later known as the day that it died. So I don't know how many people saw this coming, but there's no way the writing wasn't on the wall that this shit was gonna die. This shit didn't just happen all of a sudden. There was clearly a trajectory that wasn't looking good. So I don't know how many people knew this was going to happen, but it did. It did happen, kind of seemingly out of nowhere to a lot of people. This is not WoW. No, it's not. It's not. But it relates to it. The MMO genre, WoW is the king of it. So it's interesting to look at what happens to it when it comes to other games.
Trying to soothe people's concerns. We remain deeply committed to making Ashes of Creation a world worthy of your time, your stories, and your belief. That's a nice statement, but within a few days, well, it appeared that the entire development team would be laid off. And this is where things get honestly insane. I'll be real, if you don't want to code or you don't like games, skip this.
Oh.
But if you're still here, then that's good, because it means today's sponsor, Boot.dev, was built specifically for how
There it
us
is.
gamers actually learn. And that's actually more relevant than ever. Now, Boot teaches back-end development. That's the kind of thing that lands you 100k plus jobs, and they do it through a proper 12-month program structured like an RPG. Leaderboards,
right.
achievements, a Discord that actually
Learn
helps
how to do what
over
AI is gonna do.
750,000 students who have completed 33.7 million
I'm just kidding.
lessons.
Maybe they
which
won't.
is
Maybe
wild.
AI
And
won't.
that's
I don't know.
covering tech like Python, TypeScript, and Go, all from the fundamentals up. There's projects, there's
can't
modules, and the
skip it.
likes
I
of
feel bad.
actually
So we'll
using
just
Git
watch it.
properly. It is fantastic. Now, my perspective in this is I did a BEng computer science, focused more on C++ and C#, kind of game engine-y stuff. Completely different world to web dev, which is why I also need Boot. And their teaching approach, I can say, is incalculably better than the way it was done at university.
That's right.
And here's the thing.
Nice.
The AI tools are everywhere now, your cursors, your Claude codes, but they're only
True.
as good as the person who's using them.
That's
Boot
right.
teaches you the fundamentals that separate serious engineers from vibe coders who just ship security nightmares. Really, they do. And their new training grounds feature even generates personalized problems based on what has challenged you when you've been using Boot, all with spaced repetition baked in.
Amazing.
It's seriously gigabrain.
Unbelievable.
And you can get 25% off your first purchase at boot.dev/bellular news.
There it
You'll save
is.
the most using the annual sub, and of course, if you're not happy, they'll refund you on the spot.
Use
As
the
first
mass
reported
code.
by PC Games N, the first sign came from the Director of Communications, Margaret Crone, who took to LinkedIn to announce that she was no longer at Intrepid. Now, she implied she wasn't the only one. She cited layoffs, so multiple. But then, Stephen Sharif followed with a statement on the Ashes.
Yeah, we probably should have seen the writing on the wall here. If you got a game that's new and is getting ready to launch and you're still building it up, seeing the employment levels go in the opposite direction is probably a bad sign. Like layoffs happen, we see it all the time, especially in the industry nowadays with these huge games and all this other shit, and they just keep laying people off left and right. But when you're in a state of, launch and growth, you should be doing the opposite, right? You should be hiring like crazy because you're supposedly going to keep getting bigger than, your current team can handle. And then you grow and you get bigger and bigger. So the employment levels going in the opposite direction when you're launching a brand new MMO, probably not the best. We hear stories about World of Warcraft when that shit launched. The amount of all of a sudden they had to buy a bunch more servers. They had to bring on much more, a ton more people. They had to triple and quadruple the size of the team in the first year. That's what you want to see, right? This is very much the opposite of that.
Creation Discord. However, this was a statement personally made by him, not a professional statement. In it, he alleged that he had lost control of the company. Quote, the board began directing actions that I could not ethically agree with or carry out. He says that he quit and that most of the senior leadership team followed him in quitting. In his words, everyone acted in good faith, but the board were issuing warn notices and proceeding with a mass layoff. LinkedIn posts from staff would follow, confirming what everybody feared. Basically, yeah, everyone was gone and they had been told that they were done. Now, Stephen Sharif's post places him as the defender of this game, of the developers and of the players against a faceless board. But there's a lot to unpack with that, because how true is it? So there are things worth interrogating here. First, Intrepid's Warren Report, which basically is stuff you file with the authorities whenever there's going to be big job losses.
Big losses,
that was
yeah.
filed January 31st, and it was listed as a permanent closure affecting 123 remaining staff. However, there are other corporate filings.
Man, was that their entire staff? I mean, their staff couldn't have been that big. They didn't have like 1,000 employees. I wonder how much 123 was. Could have been all of them. I don't know.
And they tell a rather more mundane story. So let me walk you through them. The most recent company documents are from December 30th, 2025. They're a delay in the annual report until 2027. And we see no board, no owners being listed here. Just Stephen Sharif as the sole director and John Moore as the CFO. Which is perfectly normal for...
I mean, that might be the board. Yeah, and that is normal for an upstart company, right? Like, any of these, small companies that are launching off, a lot of times they just have like a CEO and a CTO. Like specifically for game related shit or any kind of software tech related stuff in the tech industry, that's all you got is you got two guys at the top. That's how it mostly works. So this could have been the board. It could have just been these two.
Or this type of filing. But some in the community see this a little differently, shall we say. Essentially
Fucking
reading
job
it as
application
evidence
now.
that Sharif is lying. And this is building on distrust that has been present since the game's announcement. Number one, for, being a crowdfunded MMO, but in this case, a bit more specifically, when he was linked to multi-level marketing schemes. Yes, MLMs, and ones that seem to reappear in Ashes of Creation's Kickstarter referral structure. Now, a purportedly leaked email to staff fills in a few gaps in this story. The company's finances are seemingly so bad that they can't pay staff for this month. This is something that's later been corroborated by Crone, who I mentioned earlier, who confirmed that the entire company had been let go. Now, the email suggests that plans aren't fully decided, but some of the 250 developers could stay to work on the game. Now, in light of that, the Steam launch does take
So they had 250 developers. I believe the number on that form was like 120 or something, right? So, I mean, pretty much half the staff had been fired all at once.
a more desperate tone, right? They needed money. Release the game on Steam, acquire money. Just that it maybe didn't go that well. But here's the thing. There are a lot of missing pieces. What about that board? You see, right now there's a board that doesn't actually appear in company documents. There's layoffs that both have and have not happened, and a pivot that seems to have came days after developers promised that they could turn things around. When you piece together all the things that have came out and that various people have said thus far in the story, it doesn't add up. And that's where we're lucky, because insiders have spoken out. Reports from both YouTuber Kira and MMORPG.com have corroborated at least some of what seems to have happened behind the scenes. Kira doesn't claim to have all the facts, but says that his sources have been accurate before, and the allegations made here are very significant. So, in his version of events, an unnamed private equity group took over ownership of Intrepid Studios on Ashes of Creation.
Oh, damn it. Private equity. Those fucking money grubbers, they come in and they just want to suck the life out of everything, and they sure sucked the life out of this, it looks like. So it looks like things got so desperate. And you know what? You expect outside money to come in. I highly doubt that anybody could truly fund this shit on their own, unless you're talking like Elon Musk maybe could fund an MMO on his own. But you have to be crazy rich. You're talking about a burn rate of millions of dollars a month on this shit. I mean, how much could you possibly handle? So, I guess they got some outside investors. The problem is, when you're getting outside investors like this, you got to make sure that they're aligned with you. Because once you give them a large percentage of your company, they got voting rights and shit now. They could totally sandbag that shit, bring it down to the ground. Maybe that's what happened here.
Then, on the 29th of January, Kira received a message confirming this. Sharif's resignation happened as he described, and most of the senior leadership followed him out the door. And the reason, well, plans to move production of the game offshore and to outsource development, keeping under 100 of their 250 staff. This private equity group are the board that Sharif blamed, and after these resignations, their plans changed within the day. Because without leadership, the owners simply decided to just file for...
Yeah, just like manufacturing and everything. It's offshoring of the fucking work, man. Offshoring of the work leading to degradation in quality. Right, you can't control the shit as much anymore. Just starts to mess things up a lot. And The whole thing about offshoring content or taking stuff out of the company, Blizzard actually does this. There are a lot of things that Blizzard does where they kind of they get the instructions that they want to do, they type it all up. They're like, we want to do this, do that. We want to remake this zone, right? We want to remake Silvermoon, and they'll offload it to somebody else. Now, I don't think remaking Silvermoon was a project that they offloaded, but there are certain things that they do. We do know that they will send it out to smaller little development companies and pay them to get it done.
Mass layoffs, and there's no money for severance, PTO that people are owed, overtime, any of that. And obviously there's not going to be money for that when the salaries aren't being paid.
That's another thing, though. I feel bad for the employees, but this is part of the risk that you run when you join a startup. It's like you're buying when you join a startup, you're buying a lottery ticket, especially this early on, where you're hoping, usually startups, when you get into one this early, you get a little bit of a piece, tiny piece of it. And you hope to be one of those early people that, rise up with the company as the company rises. But there's always the chance that this shit crashes and burns. And if it does, you're not going to have the security blankets that you would if you were at a very large company. You're not going to have payouts after, you're going to have back pay. It's just all fucked. That's it. It's gone. It's going to dissolve, right? So that's just one of the risks that you run with joining a startup, for sure.
So that's quite the story. Now, MMORPG.com sources do corroborate much of this. The numbers aren't exactly the same. They frame it as a skeleton crew originally staying to work in the game before basically that plan was abandoned in favor of a full layoff. They also confirmed that staff aren't being paid whatsoever. Now, other elements do remain unexplained, such as the identity of this board, how the company ended up under different ownership than Sharif, and a few other things. So it's all quite weird. Now, none of this is contradicted by publicly available information, at least of the time of this video's recording. Here's the thing. It is not unusual for a private equity firm to come in, buy something, and then immediately kill it.
Yeah.
But if the new owners can offload debt onto a failing entity and then just hang on to the assets, that can actually work better for them than trying to make a game with no creative leads. Now, to be clear, that's what we call a theory, and it's the sort of thing that does happen with private equity firms.
So yeah, all the assets are still there, and this MMO could just be sold. Intrepid Studios could sell the MMO to somebody else who takes it, whether or not they make an MMO or whatever else. They get all the assets. So that could be what this investment firm did. They take it, they add on a bunch of other shit that was already failing, bankrupt the shit out of it. It's gone, and then they take the assets and sell them off. It's a corporate world at its best, right? Capitalism winning.
But I do think it's a theory that carries some weight given everything else that we've been seeing. Online, we're seeing community members combing through every public filing that they can find. I mean, come on, it's the gaming community. If there is, I don't know, a photo of Shia LaBeouf having a mental breakdown that makes its way onto 4chan, people will find out where Shia planted the flag by looking at the cloud patterns. That's a real story, by the way.
True.
But it is to say the internet is damn good at finding things. And by things, I mean UCC liens, tax records, corporate documents, anything that might explain what the hell happened.
Yeah.
And what they found so far...
Have you guys seen the shit of how people discovered Epstein's gaming account, like, still active on Fortnite and Rocket League? Like, leave it, like, you got private investigators out there, you got multi-level cover-ups, you got entire government agencies potentially covering up this man's whereabouts. And who discovered where the fuck he was? The gamers. The fucking degenerate gamers who can literally siphon their entire life's soul into doing something. And they did it with gaming. They did it with his fucking Xbox account. It's crazy. I read into how this person did this shit, but they looked at like previous purchases of when he was live, when his account was live, and what the name was, and its affiliate, where it was located, and all this shit. And they drew it out. Now that same account is no longer. It doesn't appear. It appears offline. You can't see it anymore. I think he privated it, but it was crazy. I mean, the gamers, man. Be careful. Don't make the gamers angry. They'll fucking find you.
Paints a picture of a company deeply in trouble. An $850,000 case for unpaid cloud services from December 2025, and then insurance debts from June 2025. To those who already doubted whether Ashes of Creation was legitimate, this just ended up being more evidence that the whole thing was a precarious house of cards. Now obviously, there's the question of, is it a scam? I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But as of right now, there is no hard evidence of wrongdoing. But I said hard there.
Right.
There's no hard evidence. There certainly seems to
Soft
be
evidence?
evidence of poor financial management. But on there being no hard evidence of wrongdoing, well, there's one man who wants to change that. And his name is Stephen Sharif. I have made a public statement. My next action will be a public filing. I hope that at that point, people have a better understanding of what happened. That's a follow-up message from Stephen Sharif that seems to confirm that he wants to take this to court. Now, he's
Damn.
advised players to be patient, to avoid jumping to conclusions, and to wait for legal filings to tell the story. Obviously, though, people don't really want to wait. The Steam reviews for the game have tanked. Of course, that's a little bit immaterial
yeah,
because the game has now been pulled from sale.
Right.
And those who bought it only 2 months ago are pushing Valve for refunds. Some people are getting those refunds, but that actually raises a thornier question for Kickstarter backers. Intrepid committed to a lofty promise, and it's a promise that goes far beyond Kickstarter's platform obligations. Quote, and finally, in the case that Ashes of Creation does not launch, we promise to refund all backers in full.
Jesus.
So, does Steam count? Ashes of Creation is still an alpha. It never made it to beta, yet it is on Steam.
It did launch.
And it does bring up
It launched in, early access form, technically.
another fun little game.
A lot of people think that's the only reason why it launched, that they already knew it was dead, but they launched it so they wouldn't have to refund the backers.
You see, the last crowdfunded MMO to collapse like this was Chronicles of Illyria. Now, it saw backers take it to court and walk away with nothing. Now, some people have speculated here that the Steam launch was a last-ditch effort to avoid legal trouble. But considering the time since that promise, the financial collapse that we're seeing now, and Sharif no longer being involved with the company, who the hell would be paying for those refunds? Company sure as hell can't do it. Like, maybe if that refund promise was like a legally enforceable thing, would that mean that the company now owned by the private equity firm would owe money to those people? I mean, I've seen some people basically say, is this just them trying to dump that obligation onto Valve?
Maybe.
Obviously, in a case like that, it would not be correct for Valve to be issuing those refunds. It's not really their bag. All that Valve, I think, should really have to do is just stand by their own refund policy.
Yeah.
Obviously, though, that's not going to...
I don't know what their refund policy... Isn't it like you play a certain amount of hours of the game or something, you can't get a refund? Maybe somebody could pull up Valve's refund policy, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That's how I'll have to look it
players
up.
their money back. That sucks. This whole thing sucks. And certainly, in a void of information, anger and conspiracy are rife. And I don't say that to, tut-tut at people. Absolutely not. People deserve answers. Right now,
It's 2 hours or
community's
2
just trying
weeks.
to find any shred of information they can get. As things stand, Ashes of Creation social channels, the Discord, Reddit, etc., are ablaze with rage. A huge number of people...
Here it is. It's within 2 weeks of the purchase. Steam will refund offer within 2 weeks of the purchase or less than 2 hours of playtime. So that's their policy. So if people, pre-ordered this shit, or I took the early access and played more than 2 hours, they wouldn't owe them anything. Now, it did die quicker than 2 weeks out, so most people probably did fit within the 2 week window, but I think it's the 2 hour window that could have really fucked people over on this and not gotten their refund.
Feel scammed, they feel hurt, and they don't understand how this could have changed so quickly. To them, the fact they didn't know this was coming is really all the evidence that they need. It's evidence that the long-term critics were right, that this all was in fact a scam, that they were wrong to believe in a game that was a dream for many. What I'd say there is, scam is one of those words that's lost a lot of its...
You said, I watched a streamer make like a 4 hour showing of why this wasn't a scam. He made a great point with receipts and everything. I don't think it was initially a scam. I don't. I think it became a scam. That's it. I really think that it started with the, hearts and minds in the right place. And when the inevitable crash and burn was going to happen... Instead of, going down, captain goes down with the ship, we're going to fucking, everything's going down here. The captain started trying to unload some shit and was like, well, I really tried to save everybody here, but I'm just going to have to save myself. And that was it. I'm not saying that, what's his name? The guy who started this shit didn't lose money. He lost a shit ton of money. But by launching it, so he wouldn't have to refund the original backers. He was clearly trying to damage mitigate before the crash happened. That's what I think. I don't think this was meant to be a Ponzi scheme or a scam. It just became well, every man for himself once they realized the ship was going down.
Meaning. Now, those MLM things I mentioned earlier, yeah, could be some scamminess going
Now
on.
Sam
there.
is the scammer.
Generally speaking, a scam is, me telling you, hey,
The captain
I'll
is
sell
fine
you this
for sure.
iPhone, and then, I give you something that looks like an iPhone, but it's actually a knockoff. Like, that is an overt scam. This does, however, feel scammy. You may have heard the phrase, don't attribute to malice what can be, easily explained by stupidity. When I look at some of those claims, like the cloud services bill, it seems that there was quite a degree of financial mismanagement here. Even thinking about the scale of this game's development team, it seems kind of huge for what I thought was supposed to be a very much sandbox-driven MMO that wouldn't rely and wouldn't really need a big content team. And to be honest with you,
Right.
the Ashes of Creation that existed in my mind was way smaller than the one that they tried to release. That might sound a little strange, but you may have heard of the phrase scope creep. I did not think the game would be trying to bite off just so much. So whenever I watched, say, the Skill Up review of the early access release, I was kind of perplexed. So at least it appears to me that they tried to do something way too big, something well beyond their means. And perhaps it could be the case that...
Man, it did look pretty. I will say that. I mean, remember when Intrepid was going to launch earlier, but then Unreal Engine 5 came out and they decided to go back and redo the entire thing through Unreal Engine 5, which kind of delayed everything. In terms of looks, I feel they spared no expense. I mean, this shit is beautiful. They really did build out like a pretty looking MMO world. It's just unfortunate that it seems like it was more ambitious than they could handle.
they thought being able to get multiple thousands from some people for, the backer pledges, maybe they thought we can just run this just like Star Citizen. We can just continually sell people ships and somehow have this big, money number that will go up. For me, the biggest...
They thought they could survive on whales. Didn't work.
question, though, is what the hell is going on with this private equity firm? When did that happen? Because again, this whole idea of a board being involved is a very new and fresh thing, and it's one that goes directly against what Stephen Sharif said, even if it is more likely than not that this is a series of incompetent financial management combined with last-ditch efforts to save a company, maybe by taking on some private equity investment, maybe by trying the Steam thing. At the end of the day, it does feel dishonest, especially when the situation appears to be materially much worse than
I think, the most dishonest part was that they never indicated that there were real issues going down, right? I don't think people would have been as angry if they were going to launch early access, but before they did, they were like, listen guys, we're in trouble. We're going to have to see how much we make off of early access to see if we can continue developing this game or not. I don't think anyone would have been angry at that point. If they said that before the early access purchases went out, I think people would have been completely fine and they would have made the decision to purchase it knowing that it could die at some point. But by doing that, they could have also lessened the amount of money they got. Or maybe more people would have supported it and wanted to keep it going and they would have gotten more money. I don't know. It would have been a risky move for sure, but I think the optics would have looked way better and people would have trusted it more and not been as angry if this shit actually failed like it did.
Presented to players, and some of those players were payers, be that for the early access release in Steam, or be that the very large quantities of money that people backed this game for. And in that original post on the 29th, whoever was left at Intrepid said they would host a stream on February 13th to showcase what was next.
That's what I said. There was a stream
schedule. Doesn't seem like that's happening, not with there being no staff left, even if the game's servers are still running. But outside the game, I think we are only just starting to see a legal process that will likely take years to resolve. And sadly, the game that people desperately dreamed of is just looking further and further away.
He's dead.
Than ever.
He's dead.
Who knows where this is going to go? However, I guess I will say this. Ashes of Creation as an IP has certainly got image problems right now. However, that as an asset does actually exist. And it is
they
now
built out a whole
owned by
world.
this private equity firm.
Yeah.
Maybe there is some future
Sub-focus.
where someone acquires that asset. And maybe and maybe from that, something could happen. But I would...
Yeah, they're going to acquire it, turn it into a gacha game with loot boxes, and that'll be the feature of the game, right? This investment firm is just going to want to milk it for every dollar they could possibly get out of it. So get ready for loot boxes in an MMO.
Not expect some Hytale style turnaround here. This
Nothing
does
too
appear
drastic.
to be substantially more of a shit show. Let me know what you think. My emails are open. We will follow the story as it develops. And if all this drama has you riled up for some more, go watch this video next. It's about Highguard, but not just the drama. It's about what's actually going on with the game and how it at least seems that them not being a AAA team owned by a publisher, well, maybe playing in their favor. Because to be fair to them, they're actually moving fast.
Everyone in chat talking about how my React content works. People just love to hear me talk. Okay, that's what can I say? I got the numbers to back it up. They just love it. And this video was very interesting. People love me more than they love this game, I guess, because yes, it is dead. It did die. Like I said, the fact that it seems like they knew this ship was going down. And then they launched early access as maybe a last-ditch effort to save it. That's like the most positive spin I can put on it. Or even worse, they launched it as a last-ditch effort to just pull some money out of people before it died. Could be either one. Like I said, could have been better had they kind of launched early access and told people, listen, we're in trouble, and we got to have a really successful early access period to keep this game going. Would have been better. That's not how they did it. I'm sure more and more will come out about this as the court case from Sharif, I guess, comes out. We'll see what happens with that. A nice video overall from Bellular.